All right, Nick, let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys. Obviously, we're big fans of what Dallas did when they hired Schottenheimer and how he built the staff. We think there's some really, really smart ideas here going on in the Cowboys organization. But in one key, the next step I'd say to making this team a playoff contender is how they go about getting players and some really smart ideas there as well. I think there's going to be big changes going on in how they do things in Dallas. I think Cowboys fans are going to be very excited about it. But before we get into that, I'm Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, let's jump straight into it. We got a great article from over on Blogging with the Boys, one of my favorite fan site names. I think it's, perfectly said, but let's get on into it. It says, VP of Player Personnel Will McClay recently talked about a different approach to player acquisition this offseason with a new head coach. He says most coaches, when they assemble a staff, they get a bunch of their friends and people that they know, McClay said. He went out, talking about Schottenheimer, to find the best for what he was looking for. Ideas, new guys, bring new things, and make it his way. So what does Brian Schottenheimer way look like? He's very humble but very hungry, McClay said. He's going to be confrontational with the communication, but respectful with that. And that test your conviction. He's very, very clear with what he wants and what he wants to do and getting everybody on the same page. So I think this is an interesting approach. I think they're saying the way he went after his coaches, he's going to do some different stuff about how he goes for his players as well. I think this is a really interesting update. I'm curious what your thoughts are on this one, Nick. But before we get to you, Cowboys fans, in the comment section below, the more and more you hear about this, I know we talked about it right when it happened, and there was a lot of divisiveness. There's a lot of contention that Schottenheimer's just a team guy. They promoted him, and I think at the beginning, people didn't necessarily love the hire. But now that you've seen what he's done with this coaching staff, now that you hear that there's a new plan about how they're going to go about player acquisition, let's regrade the head coaching hire. How are you feeling now? Do you think this is an A hire now that you've seen a little bit and seen what Schottenheimer is bringing to the table? Do you think it's a C hire? You still are unsure. It's mid. You don't know what's going to happen. You need to see results on the field. Or are you saying it's an F? You just hate everything. You think Jerry Jones fumbled the bag once again, and this team is going to be in the dumpster for the rest of eternity. Let us know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what do you think about this latest out of Dallas?
So I think with the Schottenheimer hire and with the staff he has filled out is as ironically, because a lot of people I think had the initial thoughts you mentioned as like, oh, they just hired another yes man. It's just another Jason Garrett kind of thing where it's status quo and this is just the Cowboys are going to be the Cowboys the way they've been the past few decades, and that's just gonna keep on continuing, right? No change. But with Schottenheimer's approach, with how he's filled out his staff, and Mill Clay kind of highlighted here, it's a lot of differentiating opinions. It's no yes men at all. It's a lot of very powerful personalities. What it's signifying overall is that this is an offseason of change for the Cowboys. And look, it's not going to be incredibly drastic, right? It's not like they have the number one overall pick. Prescott's not going anywhere. CeeDee Lamb's locked up, right? Obviously, they're going to, barring something incredibly shocking, they're going to give Micah Parsons a big deal. Diggs is already locked up, right? A lot of the pieces are already in place. There's not going to be an incredible amount of change for the Cowboys, at least at the top level going forward in terms of the players on the field. But we're going to see a big change in approach. And I think that's what's really important. A big change in style, a big change in operations, like how we go about solving problems. We've got to make this roster better. How do we go about doing it? Are we willing to think outside the box? Are we willing to do some aggressive things, right? Are we willing to do what the Eagles, for example, did, which the Eagles have over the past few years have been leading or near the top of the league in dead cap hit. The Cowboys have been terrified of dead cap hit for a long time. They've been moving against that. Frankly, they've been terrified of spending in free agency outside the organization itself for a number of years now. We're going to see a change in all of that, right? Because we're just seeing an overall change in approach. And that's what the Schottenheimer hire has actually allowed the Cowboys to do. By almost hiring a guy so controversial at the time and kind of just sticking with him and let him do his thing in terms of filling out the staff, it basically created a massive permission structure for McClay, the front office, and all these guys to change what they were going to do as well. Because if they had brought in, let's say, a big name guy, if they brought in Pete Carroll, or if they had retained Mike McCarthy, it would have been very hard for McClay, the front office, to then suddenly shift their entire focus this offseason when it comes to player acquisition going forward, right? Because they said, well, we want to kind of keep status quo, right? We're dealing with a Super Bowl winning head coach and McCarthy, a Super Bowl winning, national title winning coach in Carroll, right? We don't want to upset the apple cart too much. But when you got Schottenheimer in, everyone already hated Schottenheimer, right? All the media, all the talking heads said, oh, this is a stupid hire. The Cowboys are going to suck. It gives you free reign, right? You can go about and just do the craziest moves or be more aggressive or less aggressive in certain areas as you want. You can totally change your approach because you have the cover of a coach that everyone literally thinks is going to be terrible, at least initially. And that's what we're seeing with the Cowboys. And that's why Schottenheimer was able to come in and basically hire, to a man, almost an imperfect coaching staff, because he just had the ability to go out and say, all right, well, you already hate me. You're already critical of me. I can go out and hire my guys, and I can hire guys who I don't agree with me on everything, who I think will be good fits for a strategy going forward, who may not be exactly, NFL experience, right? Hired a lot of guys from the college ranks. It was almost, again, it's early to say this comparison, but it reminds me a lot of the 1989 hiring Jimmy Johnson to be the head coach, because of how bad the Cowboys were at the time and all the criticism that Jerry Jones got. And of course, a lot of people thinking Johnson and his staff were not up to the task. It allowed the Cowboys to make a lot of bonkers moves that actually worked out incredibly well for them. The most famous example, of course, is the Herschel Walker trade. It's not nearly at that level yet in terms of how bad the Cowboys are versus how bad they were, and how much criticism there is levied at Schottenheimer versus how much is levied at Jerry Jones in the late 1980s. But the concept is still the same. The Cowboys have a massive permission structure, and Will McClay and the entire front office is taking advantage of it, and they're going to take advantage of it. They're going to make big changes and a lot of big moves this offseason. I know a lot of people in Cowboys land are still nervous. They're like, is it going to be the same old, same old? Folks, I think we can say once and for all the answer to that question, it's no.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly right. And when you talk about the main thing, the next thing up, draft, free agency, I think when you look at what they're doing in Dallas, I think it's going to be very different than what people are seeing, and maybe people what they initially want. I think that's going to be the main thing here. The easy answers, the no duh, let's this is the best player available. Let's go after this guy. I don't think we're going to see a lot of those moves. I think it's going to be kind of different for the Cowboys going forward, as far as the T. Higgins, the Trey Smiths, like the top tier free agents. I think they're going to go deeper. I think they're going to look and try to find value in the free agency market and just bring in guys that they like. Maybe someone they think is a good player, fits their scheme, those kind of things. I don't think they're going to go status quo anymore as far as this is the number one free agent everyone's talking about. Let's go after and throw a bunch of money at this guy, because I think this is just a different mentality about this team. And I think in the draft, the same way. I think this is going to be really interesting draft season for the Cowboys as well. They might shake things up. They might do things that are very unexpected. And I'm excited about that from this staff. I think we're seeing, like you said, everybody is now permission to change what they're doing. I don't think we're going to see anything traditionally Cowboys. And I think Cowboys fans would say that's probably good. We don't want the same old Cowboys. That's what a lot of people say. It's just same old team, same old stuff. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think we're about to see a lot of change happen. I think it's going to be for the best. I'm really excited about this Cowboys team, and I love what Coach Schottenheimer has brought to the table.
And one final point to end on, you brought up, I think it's so important, is that in my viewing lifetime, the Cowboys in the offseason have gone on two extremes. They've either spent no money or they've signed TO, right? They've never gone into it with a clear, concise, effective strategy for short, medium, long-term roster building, right? It's one of those two extremes. We're either doing absolutely nothing, or we're throwing as much money and overpaying for players that we shouldn't, getting guys that maybe aren't great fits or whatever, right? We've seen that now, both sides of the spectrum. That's going to change this offseason. We're going to see a clear, directive, strategic approach. We saw it with the coaching staff. Will McClay and his team now have the ability to do that when it comes to drafting players, when it comes to signing free agents, potentially trading for players. This is phenomenal news for the Dallas Cowboys.